8 legendary motorcycle brands, names once synonymous with glory, now stand on the brink of collapse in 2025. Benelli's bargain models, riddled with defects, Norton's legacy shattered by a £14 million fraud, industry icons threatened not by speed, but by internal chaos. If the badge on your tank can no longer guarantee trust or survival, which giants will weather the storm, and which will vanish first? Benelli's badge once represented Italian racing pride, but for today's riders, it often means a waiting game and mounting frustration. Founded in 1911, Benelli built its reputation on sharp design and European craftsmanship. Since the 2005 takeover by China's Tianjiang Group, that reputation has been battered by a wave of quality complaints. Owners of the TRK 502 and Leoncino, drawn by prices that undercut the Japanese competition, report a steady stream of issues: corroded exhausts after a single winter, dashboard failures, stalling engines, and wiring gremlins that leave bikes stranded miles from home. The problems don't end at the curb. When a Benelli breaks, the real ordeal begins. Dealers, often small and under-resourced, face a flood of warranty claims, but lack the diagnostic tools and spare parts to keep up. Mechanics recount waiting weeks, sometimes months, for basic components to arrive from China. Riders swap stories of bikes languishing in back rooms, with service bays clogged by half-repaired machines and frustrated customers pacing the showroom. One shop manager describes the process as fixing a puzzle with missing pieces, each delay eroding the trust that once brought buyers through the door. This bottleneck is more than a local nuisance. It signals a deeper instability within Benelli's global operation. The company's attempt to blend Italian heritage with mass-market Chinese production has left it stranded between identities. Aggressive pricing wins attention, but persistent faults and sluggish support drive buyers to rivals who offer reliability as standard. In an era where a single negative review can ripple across continents, Benelli's struggle to deliver basic dependability puts its entire future at risk. For many, the badge now stands for promises unkept, a warning that even a century of history can't shield a brand from the consequences of cutting corners. Norton's name once conjured images of Isle of Man victories and British engineering triumphs, but in recent years its story has become a warning for anyone who trusts a badge over a balance sheet. Between 2012 and 2020, CEO Stuart Garner siphoned £14 million from employee pension funds, leaving hundreds of workers and retirees robbed of their futures. While Norton's factory gate still echoed with the sounds of hand-built motorcycles behind closed doors, court transcripts revealed a maze of missing money and broken promises. Owners who paid deposits for limited edition bikes found themselves empty-handed. No motorcycle, no refund, and no recourse. For many, savings meant for retirement disappeared overnight, replaced by years of legal limbo and shattered faith in a brand they once loved. The fallout was swift and public. In 2020, Norton collapsed under the weight of its debts and scandal. The company's assets were auctioned off, and the British government launched investigations into the misuse of pension funds. Stories from defrauded pensioners and unpaid customers dominated headlines, turning Norton's legacy of innovation into a symbol of betrayal. Even as the court cases dragged on, many victims remained uncompensated, their lives upended by white-collar crime that left no easy fix. Into this wreckage stepped TVS Motor Company, one of India's largest manufacturers, with a £100 million rescue package. TVS built a new UK factory and set about restoring Norton's image, launching the V4SS and V4CR superbikes priced above £40,000. But the road back to respect is steep. The new Nortons are rare and expensive, produced in small batches, and sold through a handful of dealers. For many former customers, the pain of lost pensions and undelivered bikes lingers, outweighing any promise of British craftsmanship reborn. TVS's investment brought technical expertise and fresh capital, but money cannot erase the scars left by betrayal. The Norton badge now carries a question: can trust ever be rebuilt? Or is the damage permanent for those who paid the highest price? MV Agusta's motorcycles have always been more than machines. They're rolling sculptures, celebrated as the Ferrari of motorcycles for their daring lines and championship pedigree. The F3's razor-sharp silhouette, the Brutal's muscular stance, and the Turismo Veloce's elegance once drew collectors and racers alike, each model a testament to the hand of Italian artisanship. But behind this artistry lies a history of instability that has left the brand's future in question. Ownership has changed hands time and again. Kegeva tried to steer MV Agusta through the late 1990s, only to be followed by Harley Davidson in 2008 and Mercedes-AMG in 2014. Each promised a renaissance, yet none managed to steady the finances or secure long-term independence. In 2022, Pierer Mobility, the Austrian giant behind KTM, acquired a majority stake, bringing industrial power and access to global supply chains. The move promised relief from mounting debt and a shot at survival in a market dominated by rivals like Ducati, BMW, and Bimota. Yet this alliance has come at a price. Insiders describe growing friction between MV Agusta's design team and new management. Engineers who once obsessed over bespoke components now find themselves pressured to adopt cost-saving measures. Shared electronics, standardized suspension, and even engine parts borrowed from KTM's catalog. The very uniqueness that made MV Agusta desirable is threatened by platform sharing, as the brand's ultra-premium status becomes harder to justify when buyers recognize familiar hardware beneath the Italian bodywork. Financial filings reveal the stakes. MV Agusta's debt remains high, and profitability hinges on moving a small number of expensive bikes in a shrinking luxury segment. As the line between boutique artistry and mass production blurs, the risk is clear. When exclusivity fades, so does the justification for a $25,000 price tag. For those drawn to MV Agusta's legacy, the question is no longer about performance or beauty, but whether the soul of the brand can survive in an era of corporate consolidation. Royal Enfield's meteoric rise reshaped the motorcycle world almost overnight. In 2010, the company turned out just 50,000 bikes a year. By the early 2020s, that number had exploded past 800,000, driven by the runaway popularity of the Classic 350 and the Himalayan. Showrooms that once saw a trickle of visitors became crowded with new buyers eager for retro charm at an accessible price. But behind the scenes, this tidal wave of demand exposed cracks that no amount of heritage could hide. Workshops struggled to keep pace. Mechanics, many new to the trade, faced a flood of warranty claims, everything from leaky forks on the Himalayan to electrical gremlins in the Classic 350. Service managers describe their daily routine as triage, with repair tickets piling up faster than they can be cleared. Training programs lagged behind hiring, leaving underprepared technicians to diagnose complex issues with little guidance. The result? Long waits for even basic repairs, and a growing backlog that stretched from city centers to rural outposts. Parts shortages only deepened the frustration. Riders waiting months for a replacement fuel pump or a simple sensor found themselves stranded, their bikes sidelined while dealers chased deliveries from factories overwhelmed by volume. Social media filled with stories of missed riding seasons and repeated trips to the shop. Recall notices became more frequent, and each one added to the queue. For many, the pride of owning a Royal Enfield gave way to anxiety about when, or if, their motorcycle would be roadworthy again. Meanwhile, competition circled. Triumph's Speed 400 and Honda's CB350, along with a wave of Chinese-built rivals, offered similar vintage style with promises of quicker service and fewer headaches. Royal Enfield's rapid expansion, once its greatest asset, now threatens to undermine the trust it worked so hard to build. The lesson is clear. In the rush to scale up, after-sales support can become the weakest link, leaving loyal customers searching for alternatives. Indian Motorcycle, founded in 1901 and reborn by Polaris in 2011, once stood as Harley Davidson's only true American rival. The resurrection brought a fleet of big-bore V-twins, Chief, Chieftain, Roadmaster, each loaded with chrome, nostalgia, and a price tag to match. For a brief moment, Indian's showrooms buzzed with curiosity and optimism. But as the years passed, a stubborn reality set in. The classic cruiser market was shrinking, and the brand's core buyers were aging out. Industry surveys show that the average Indian owner is now over 55, with new rider registrations in the under 40 bracket barely moving the needle. The FTR 1200, designed to lure a younger, performance-minded crowd, missed its mark. While praised for handling and style, it failed to generate meaningful sales outside a small group of enthusiasts. Instead, the heart of Indian's business remained tied to heavyweight cruisers, bikes that appealed to a demographic growing older each year. Polaris, watching the numbers, began consolidating its dealer network. Since 2022, dozens of Indian dealerships have shuttered or merged, leaving large swaths of North America and Europe with limited access to sales and service. Franchise owners describe a noticeable drop in foot traffic, with some reporting that weekend demo rides now draw half the crowds of just 5 years ago. Dealership maps tell the story. Regions that once supported 2 or 3 Indian outlets now make do with 1, often sharing floor space with Polaris ATVs and snowmobiles. Riders in rural areas face round trips of over 100 miles for basic service. The consolidation is more than a logistical headache. It's a warning sign. When a brand's future rides on a customer base that's literally aging out, and the pipeline of new buyers remains dry, even a storied name can find itself cornered. Indian's struggle is not just about competition or product. It's about time running out for a business model built on nostalgia. Triumph's ambition is visible in every corner of its lineup. The Speed 400, built in partnership with Bajaj, rolls out of Indian factories toward showrooms from London to Bangkok, priced to tempt first-time riders and commuters. At the other end, the Tiger 1200 squares up against BMW's GS, loaded with electronics and adventure credentials, demanding top-tier service from every boutique dealer. Now, for the first time in its history, Triumph is selling a full-blooded motocross machine, the TF250X, aimed straight at Japanese and Austrian rivals who have dominated dirt for decades. Each of these moves brings its own risks. The Speed 400's affordability relies on Bajaj's scale, but also exposes Triumph to fierce price wars and the challenge of maintaining brand cachet with a mass-market product. The Tiger 1200's complexity requires highly trained technicians, yet many Triumph dealers are small, stretched thin by the demands of servicing everything from entry-level singles to flagship adventure bikes. The TF250X, meanwhile, enters a fiercely competitive market where brand loyalty is hard-won and technical support is relentless. Beneath all this, the TE1 electric prototype remains just that, a prototype. Despite years of research and government funding, there is still no production electric Triumph for sale. The costs of developing, launching, and supporting so many new projects at once are immense. particularly for a company that relies on a global network of boutique dealers already juggling a crowded service calendar and tightening margins. For Triumph, the gamble is clear: bet big on every segment or risk irrelevance. But as complexity rises and support systems strain, even the most storied badge can find itself spread too thin to survive the next downturn. Inside Harley Davidson dealerships, the generational divide is impossible to ignore. Veteran sales staff describe showrooms where the average customer is closer to retirement than their first ride. Surveys back up what's visible on the floor. The median Harley buyer is now in their late 50s, with each passing year bringing fewer young faces through the door. For decades, the brand's appeal rested on the promise of rebellion and open-road freedom. Today, that promise struggles to resonate with a generation raised on sport bikes, technology, and urban mobility. Harley's leadership saw the storm coming and gambled big on a solution. In 2019, the company launched Livewire, an all-electric motorcycle meant to redefine the brand for a new era. The project consumed hundreds of millions of dollars, costs that quickly spiraled as engineers chased range, performance, and regulatory approvals. When Livewire finally reached showrooms, its price tag soared above $30,000, and its real-world range lagged behind expectations. Dealers recall the awkward conversations with die-hard Harley owners, many of whom dismissed the bike as a toy for the wealthy or a betrayal of the V-twin tradition. Young, tech-savvy riders, meanwhile, balked at the cost and limited charging network. Sales sputtered, and within 2 years, Harley spun off Livewire as a separate company, swallowing enormous write-offs and leaving dealers with unsold inventory. While the Pan America adventure bike and the Sportster S have brought some fresh attention, their success is measured and narrow, insufficient to offset the decline of Harley's core cruiser business. The company's product lineup remains heavily skewed toward heavyweight models priced well above $20,000, leaving a critical gap below the $15,000 mark where new riders and budget-conscious buyers look first. Veteran dealers warn that without affordable, modern options, the brand risks becoming a museum piece, preserved in chrome but unable to attract the next generation. Harley Davidson now faces a stark dilemma: reinvent itself at the risk of alienating its loyal base, or ride its legacy into demographic oblivion. The outcome will determine not just the fate of a company, but the meaning of an American icon. At its peak, KTM was the envy of the motorcycle world, boasting 300,000 sales a year and a reputation for relentless growth. But the same drive that fueled its rise now threatens to unravel the empire. In the aftermath of the pandemic, production lines ran overtime, flooding showrooms with new motorcycles. By mid-2025, an estimated 250,000 units sat unsold across global dealer networks, enough to choke cash flow and send shockwaves through the entire supply chain. Dealers, once eager for fresh inventory, found themselves slashing prices just to clear floor space. Reports from North America and Europe describe discounts of 20% or more on current models, with some showrooms carrying 3 years' worth of unsold bikes. The problem isn't just volume. The KTM 690, Husqvarna 701, and GasGas 700 all share the same engine and chassis, differing only in plastics and paint. Customers notice, and so do dealers, who now compete against themselves, eroding margins and confusing buyers. Floor plan financing costs spiral as unsold inventory ages, putting smaller dealerships at risk of collapse. Meanwhile, Pierer Mobility's financial statements reveal a mounting crisis. Debt has climbed steadily since 2023, driven by overproduction, softening demand, and the cost of constant model updates. Research and development spending on electric projects and racing programs, once a source of pride, now drains resources with little return. As margins slip and dealers struggle to move stock, the group's entire business model teeters. The lesson is stark. Unchecked expansion and overlapping brands can turn strength into fragility overnight. For KTM, the race is no longer about speed, it's about survival. In 2023, Pyrer Mobility, the parent of KTM, Husqvarna, and GasGas, reported a significant rise in debt alongside record production, while Harley Davidson's annual reports confirmed hundreds of millions lost on its live-wire electric division. Over the past 5 years, brands like Benelli, Norton, and MV Agusta have battled ownership upheaval, quality failures, and customer trust crises, all documented through court filings, warranty data, and financial disclosures. Yet, key questions remain. How many unsold bikes sit in global warehouses, and what impact will further dealer closures have on riders' access to service and support? What is clear is that heritage alone no longer shields any brand from market forces. As dealer networks shrink and competition intensifies, buyers must look beyond tradition, checking recall records and financial news before making decisions. The fate of these 8 brands will be determined not just by legacy, but by how well they adapt to a rapidly changing industry.